We're going to go ahead and get started. My name's Jasmine.
I can't hear you.
My name's Jasmine, and I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves. So maybe just like your name, your school, and why you read the book.
Hi, I'm Journey Donaldson. I go to Mullane High School, and I read the book because I heard it was awesome. So, yeah.
Hello, I am Drea Carr. I go to the Rock Island High School, and I read the book because I wanted to learn more about the justice that happened.
Good. Very good. So not only is it going to be like a book discussion, but the book is going to lead us in a discussion about social justice and what that means in the Quad Cities and in our own lives, et cetera, with help from the audience. Sound good? Good. We have a hand.
Yes, I was wondering if you were going to introduce yourself.
I'm Jasmine. I go to the University of Illinois in Chicago, and I read the book because I thought that it would be very interesting, and it was. So, to start, my mom thought it would be kind of a good tie-in to talk about some personal experiences that we had related to the book itself. And she wrote down a story. It was before my time, but my dad probably could comment on it as well. She talked about how they were traveling home from a family reunion, and my sister was 3. That's my sister right there. Say hi, Kayla.
Hi, Kayla.
And she was, so my family was traveling home, and they were pulled over by the police, and my dad was forced to get out of the car, and my sister was in the back seat saying, "Please don't shoot my dad." They were being really aggressive with him, and apparently they were looking for a 17-year-old male who was armed, and my dad was 34 years old at the time, and the person who was driving was over 60. So they didn't really fit the descriptions at all, yet they still pulled the car over and made my father get out. Dad, do you remember that instance?
Oh, yeah. It was frightening, never having, was born and raised in the western Rock Island, never had a gun pulled on me. And at that time, looking down the barrel of the gun, it changes your life a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you guys have any similar experiences or even heard any similar stories that kind of go along with what happened in the book?
A while ago, I don't know how old I was. I was younger, so about maybe 7, 6. My father was pulled over and he didn't have his license on him. So, and I was sick, I was asleep in the driver's seat, and my dad is a felon. So they asked him for his license, and I'm just sitting there. I woke up and I was like, "Dad, are you going back to jail?" It was just heartbreaking to see my father get pulled over again.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, I don't have any instances like that, but I actually watched this show, and it was like around the time where there was a lot of shootings and stuff, and it's a show called Black Lightning, and there was a scene where the dad got pulled over because they were looking for a teenager, but he's obviously like a 40-year-old man, and he was basically saying, "Why are you pulling me over?" And he was just like, "We're just trying to look for a 17-year-old. And he was like, "Well, because I'm black, I fit that description," but they never answered, and they just went on with their lives. So you kind of see that in everyday life, and
Yeah, thank you. Recently in Chicago, they came to a decision on the Laquan Mcdonald case, and our last panelist is here and ready to join us. But yeah, so it was earlier this week actually. They decided the verdict on the Laquan Mcdonald case, and if you're not familiar with that, he was shot 16 times in the back in cold blood. And the city was actually getting prepared for the riots, and so I remember they took us out of our classrooms and they were like, we're gonna stop class right now. You guys can go back to your dorms, go home. But at 2 o'clock, we recommend that you're not on the streets, because really the whole entire city thought that the police officer was going to be found not guilty. It turned out that he was found guilty of second-degree murder, and 16 counts of assault with every single shot. So he'll be doing a really long time in prison. But as we saw in the book, that's not always the case, and justice is not always served. So, chapter 2 begins. Oh, hey Mariah, you wanna tell the people who you are?
Sorry, I was late. Is this?
It's on.
Is it on? Okay. Sorry, I was late. I went to the wrong library. That was my fault. Hi, I'm Ryan Martinez. I'm 17 years old, and I'm a student at Pleasant Valley High School.
And we had talked a little bit about maybe like experiences that we had, just like in our own personal lives that could relate to the book in any way, shape, or form.
I relate myself to Star very much. I go to Pleasant Valley. If you guys don't know, it's predominantly a white school, and I have a blended family like she has, and my family is not, the richest, but I do like to say my crazy family does kind of represent this side, and I do understand the struggles she goes through, having to fight that, like how do you act at school versus how you act with your friends. And I must say that I do have my two personas, like she does, so I very much related myself to Star.
Thank you for sharing. So Mariah, in chapter 2, Star flashes back to talk to some talks with her parents. The first one was about sex, or the usual birds and the bees, and the second was about the precautions to take when encountering a police officer. Has anyone had a similar conversation about what to do when stopped by the police? And Mariah, you can start, and then we'll just work our way down.
That's funny that you asked that. My mom has very much informed me what to do when I get pulled over. And it was perfectly the right timing, because recently I just did get pulled over. So it was like, my heart was racing and I was shaking, and I was like, okay, Mariah, just remember the steps your mom told you. Like, you will be fine, you will get out of this. And all I had to do was just make sure my hands were visible. I kept saying, yes, sir. I kept making sure I wasn't making any sudden movements. And when he asked, he was like, can you get your driver's license, your insurance, and all that? I was like, yes. I told him where I was reaching, but the whole time I was shaking vigorously. And he was like, are you okay? You're okay? I'm by myself in LeClaire late at night. I was terrified, but my mom has very much told me what to do. She's made sure, she's like, Ryan, do not get smart with this person. Do not just comply, whatever they want. And if you really do need help, ask them to call me and I will be there. But do not do anything dumb. I want you home at night. So.
Well, yeah, my family has had the talk about what to do if you get pulled over by a police officer, and it's really scary, but it is a part of reality. And I think it's just a messed up thing that we have to do, but you want to talk about it, because I don't want to see my 11-year-old brother dead the next day, because those people are close to you.
My mom always told me that don't give them something to react to or anything. So I just follow directions as Mariah said, as her mom did. So.
Yeah, I think that my parents would echo that, don't give them something to react to. I also think that in a lot of ways it's kind of sad that we have to have these conversations with our youth about how to react when somebody pulls you over. And being a person of color, you have a different type of fear when it comes to the police as other people might because of our experiences. And even if you haven't experienced it for yourself, you probably know somebody who has experienced some sort of police brutality or had a really bad encounter with the police. Yeah? Okay. So the author frequently talks about the concept of silence and voice throughout the book. Let's talk about the instances in the book where silence or voice are noted. Any thoughts on the author's possible intentions when writing about silence? Jeremy, you can start this time if you'd like.
Well, I read a part where she's playing basketball with her friends at gym class, and they make sort of a racist quote, and she decided to speak up instead of staying silent because, you don't want people to talk about you that way, especially if it is racist and you are like the only African American person in the group. So I thought that was very amazing.
Yeah, and really brave, right?
Yeah.
I said that silence kept Star from getting justice because her not speaking about what happened that night, it maybe caused her to feel hurt and stuff because people were saying the wrong things, saying that he was a thug, he was a drug dealer. She didn't get to say what she wanted to say about him, so it caused people to mislead. So
I always think silence can be one of the most powerful tools a person has. Also, your voice is one of the most powerful tools. I like to use mine a lot. Jasmine knows. My mom always said, you need to representing your race. I'm mixed, so I'm half Mexican, half black. So, I don't have the most two liked races mixed with me, but she always told me silence is a virtue. When somebody, you can't react, especially on your emotions, and that's one thing I always looked. I always respected about the character Star is that she knew exact moments when to speak up, and when exact moments, she knew how to fight her battles. So I always thought silence was the author used it incredibly well to show the composure and the maturity that Star had.
Yeah, and I feel like when she did have trouble kind of defining when to speak up and when not to speak up, I really appreciated the role that her parents played. They were constantly advocating for her to use her voice. And her dad kind of reminded me of my dad when he was like, don't let people put words in your mouth, say exactly what it is that you want to say and don't let anybody, set you up. Mom, you have a comment.
I was going to say that to me, and it is okay if we speak, right?
Yeah.
You can call me Teresa here. So anyway, I was going to say that in the book, I thought whenever silence was brought up, typically silence was negative. It was either not speaking up for yourself, or it was also kind of used as a punishment. Like when they were mad at each other in their family, they gave each other the silent treatment. And so it really portrayed silence to me in a negative way. And speaking out as a positive thing, that it's important to stand up for yourself, it's important to speak up for yourself and tell people how you feel. But I thought the whole silent treatment was interesting because it's that really passive-aggressive way of trying to get back at people. Because sometimes you don't say anything when somebody's done something wrong, and you just stay quiet.
Yeah.
And then that just allows it to go on again, not having conversations about topics because they're hard.
Right. Does anybody else have a comment on voice versus silence? Yeah.
See, and I think the thing is with silence is it is a virtue and it is something that's important. But there are instances when you have to use your words. Like if someone says something that's wrong, you should always stick up for what you think. But if they're just going to argue with you, the best thing for you to do is to be silent because you are not going to be able to change anything if there's an argument.
Right. Yeah. Oh, good. Cool. Thank you for participating. Okay. How do you think Star would define family? What about 7? How do you define it?
I say Star, everything is family for her. Her family develops her character over time. Her dad's store, her memories of her being with her family, and it shows what Star is, like what is she, who she.
Yeah.
I think Star doesn't use the word family as just like biological, like blood. She also uses it for her friends. She defines the family as people who she cares about. And she's like, throughout the book, without those with her family, you wouldn't really know her as a person, because although you are getting her point of view, you're also getting the outside point of view of who she really is. But because my parents always tell me, like, you know you, but when a stranger can recognize like key traits about you, that's really what defines you. And so with 7, her brother, at first she's arguing over Kenya with, it's our brother, not just your brother. But it's more deep than that. They have this incredible bond that you can see, that they would stick up for each other no matter what. And that's kind of the important thing about family, is that she really shows that no matter what happens, she always has her family's back and they always have hers.
Yeah, I think I can relate to Star in a way because her family's sort of like her safety net, if you will. And like, as she said, they always have her back and she always has theirs. And so I can totally relate to that.
And how do you guys define family?
Family for me is everything. They're my mom, she's always there. She's there right now. but I do argue with my mom sometimes, but we're always family no matter what. She's gonna be always my mom. My dad's gonna be always my dad. My grandparents gonna be always my grandparents. So I feel like they're my support system. So I love them very much.
Yeah, I as well think family is everything, even if you fight and the more imperfect things, that's what brings you together as a family, not just the good times. It's the good and bad times as well.
My family, although I'm the youngest, so I get a different perspective than a lot of people. I always tell my sister, like, if you weren't my sister, I wouldn't be your friend. So we have this like incredible bond, but we argue all the time. And most people, my mom's the only child, so she doesn't understand arguments. So why do you guys always argue? We love each other. But people who you would take the time to actually be frustrated and make up, you know that those are the true people in your life, because no matter what, you guys are still there for each other. My family is like my backbone, and although I don't tell my family everything, they just get me with just certain looks, and I mean, they see me 24/7, so they're definitely one to keep.
We can open it up to anybody who wants to talk about kind of how Star's family operated and their definition of family, if anybody would like. Want takers? That's good. I just thought I'd ask. Okay. Yeah. Yes.
I had a question for the panel. Did anybody think it was interesting how, Uncle Carlos was more, she looked at him as more of the father figure more than her own father because of his prison time? Does anybody have any experience with the non-traditional quote unquote family structure.
Oh, that's a good one.
Okay. I have my father is a felon, so he was always gone all the time. So I looked up to like my uncles and my grandpa, and so they were like the parent all the time besides my mom. So it was good.
Thank you for sharing.
Well, I luckily have a dad who's there 24/7, but I know that my mom and my dad had like sort of a hard childhood because their dads weren't always there. But I'm glad that I have parents that are there with me all the time.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I feel like one thing that I've always been able to do is look up to certain people and take knowledge from them. I've had plenty of father figures in my life. My dad is there, but when my parents got divorced, I did move in with my mom permanently, so I didn't see him as much as I did growing up. And so I did find that father figure from certain other individuals who were in my life. I have a pastor who I looked up to incredibly, and he was always there in game tournaments, like 3-hour bowling matches. He was still there. And then also teachers to me, I would look up to my teachers because you're with your teachers sometimes more than with your parents, and so I would see them as a parent role also.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks. Good. Okay. So, once news of Cleo shooting spreads across the neighborhood, unrest arises. Sirens wail outside. The news shows 3 patrol cars that have been set ablaze, and the police are present. A gas station near the freeway gets looted. My neighborhood was a war zone. That's a quote, chapter 9, page 136. Respond to this development and describe some parallels to current events.
I looked up like the Vegas shooting, the Ariana Grande concert who was bombed and killed 23 people, mostly were children and teens. I look at those and it's just terrible because why would you want to hurt people in the community and lessen the community even more? So why would you want to show that to other people, for people to learn from? You should just, not mind it or anything. It should have been more like, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is this nightclub that's in Vegas, and there was a shooter in it, and it took some lives, and I think it was a few years ago, but it was more of a prominent like gay sort of club. So that it was in the book, Star talks about the people that are on the lower level, the minorities and the poor people, and I think gay people are a part of that, and so it is messed up how someone can just take the life just because someone is different.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what we have to realize too, what happens in a lot of those communities is it's an opportunity. A lot of those people in those communities that live there, they're not the ones looting.
Right.
They're the ones that's taking the opportunity to loot.
Yeah.
So it's just not they're looting their own neighborhood. It's basically, it's say thugs
Yeah.
taking an opportunity.
Info. Yeah. Did you want to comment? Oh. What do you think of the idea of rioting, anyways? Because the book sets up the scene as people are angry, they're shouting at the police, they're singing, and justice hadn't been served, and they were obviously upset. What do you think about rioting? And if not rioting, how can these people have their voices heard?
I personally have stood in many protests and marched, and I love to use my voice, and I understand when things don't go your way, the emotion that usually comes to you is anger and frustration, and when you don't know how to properly take out these emotions, a lot of things like rioting will evolve. And one thing that I've always realized when I'm standing there and things don't go your way, you always have to keep looking towards the future, because what you do now can affect that, and your emotions now aren't really what you're probably trying to portray for the future. I think rioting is not a good idea at all. I don't personally see the point of it. I see that it will get you nowhere but just a bad image. And when you, it's kind of like a child throwing a tantrum. You're not going to want to listen at all. They're just going to turn their cheek, be like, well, they're just immature and don't know what they really want to get out. So we're just going to turn our cheek to them. So.
You got a hand?
I have a question for the room and the panel. What part do you think media plays in the image of rioting? In the book, Star was captured on television throwing, what was it, like a smoke bomb or tear gas back at the police. But it was framed in a way that failed to mention that the police had thrown it at her first. So I know right now we see a lot of things on TV. The media has amazing power in framing what situations are while cropping out some very important details.
Yeah.
Not saying writing is right or wrong, but how that frames our outlook on it.
You know,
Teresa.
I think that's a good point, because when we look at like writing headlines and things like that to engage people in media, I mean, people will use those baiting tactics to make, and there was an example, and somebody in the room may remember better than I do, but it was a group of young people after a sporting event, and they had like tore up this area, part of town. They were drinking and throwing bottles and everything. And the way it was presented in the media was like, you know, they were celebrating. They were excited. They made a mess. But when things happen like this, and it has to do with a social justice issue, and people are upset, they're upset. It's like when you know something or you believe something is wrong, and you believe that people's lives are being taken, and you haven't had a voice or a chance to say that typically comes out very emotional. So maybe some things happen that shouldn't have happened, like with celebrating after a sporting event. But when you put that in the media, like these are thugs tearing up the city, but people can drink after a sporting event and throw bottles everywhere and trash the town, and that's okay. That's part of that media. That's part of that power of that media. And I think that's where the issue of race comes in, is because why are we judging this reaction the way that we are? Is it because that's the way it is? Or is it really based on some stereotypes that we haven't talked about?
See, and media also portrays what the people who are in charge want portrayed. If people of minority are not in charge, we are not going to be seen in the light that we deserve to be seen. We'll be seen in the way that our president, our like leaders, everyone, it wants us to be seen. And that's the issue. Media is not run by people who really care. They run to make stories that people who are higher up want to hear.
Yes,
I think Denzel Washington said it best. He used to be in an interview with a red carpet, and they asked him, you know, what do you think about this so-called fake media, this fake news? And he said, well, you tell me. Our reporters are reporting things that are, it's not, the way he said it, it's not so much who reports the facts, it's who reports first. So if I get my perspective out there, whether it's right or wrong, I was the first thought you gave to it, and it was my opinion, whether it's right or wrong. You tend to base that on everything else. So even if the facts come later, it doesn't matter. You already gave me what I'm supposed to think. And unfortunately, media has a way of spinning it where even the most intelligent person, you're presented with certain facts, and only the facts they want you to see, that's all you're going to see. It doesn't matter if you get it right later. That won't be heard.
I'm just gonna piggyback off someone that stated it depends on who's presenting the media, i.e. that's why media presented of people of color is very important that we support that. And so if you also notice on mainstream, we're not there. However, they have already also gotten rid of or eliminated media that represents us in a positive manner. So it's always important for young people like yourself to maybe think about going into journalism, right? And try to portray what's really the truth for people of color. Right?
Thanks, everybody, for participating. Do you think that the situation would have been different if Star was white?
I don't know. It could have been, but it could have not been, because most people do portray it, oh, because she's black, she's not gonna achieve that justice for her friend, or if she was white, she would have got, the first hand, he would have got imprisoned or anything. So I have a mixed emotion about that, because you don't know so you really don't know if it would happen. But if she was white, it could have happened that her friend could have got justice, or it could have just ended up the same way.
I had two different pops in my thoughts that popped in my head. I had the first thought, if she was white, he probably wouldn't have died or been shot.
Even if he was black?
Even if he was black, because the fact that she was there, he probably wouldn't have taken that risk. I've seen it plenty of times where I'll be with my so-called white friends and trouble will occur and the cops are a lot lenient and like, oh, you guys are just horsing around. But when I'm with a certain type, we do get followed a lot more. And they're like, what are you guys up to? But I also have the thought that if the author has portrayed her very much as what my friends like to call me, very white black person. They like to say that I'm very white as a black. I have no idea how that is. I like to be me, Mariah. I'm sorry.
It looks like we have a consensus on the panel that people can relate to that, and you guys can relate to that quality of the Star, that she is really good at code switching.
I have the author portrayed her very much as she goes to a predominantly white school, she's educated, she's well put together, has great manners, but she still didn't get this justice. So I start to think that even though she acts a certain way, the way that she's supposed to act, she didn't get that justice. So you have to start thinking, your mind starts automatically thinking, because the way that we all raised, what other way, why isn't she getting this justice? And so it does go to race. But I like to believe that good things can happen. So I like to believe that either way, what color she was, I don't think that he would have got the justice he deserves.
Yeah, I agree, but I feel like there is a different standard when it comes to just being out and about. Because my dad told me if you're just in Walmart or something and the security is there, they're gonna target the black teenagers with purses and stuff, because they usually pick up stuff, but they won't target the white teenage girls, because all they see is race and how they can go and steal stuff. So I think the standard is sort of different, and it is messed up.
Yeah, can you speak more about how does that make you feel, being a young black girl, and knowing that no matter where you go, it'll always be different for you?
It's annoying. It really is. Yeah, it's annoying. I wish we can live in a world where everything is equal, but sadly we don't. So I guess that's just how it is. But we do have the power to change that.
Yeah.
If I could piggyback off that, I believe that, when we're born, we aren't born equal. As much as I would love to say that we are, we aren't. But what we do with that situation is very important. I'm on the fence where I'd love to educate myself with all aspects. If I know there's something wrong, I like to look at all three sides. My mom always says there's the person's side, the other person's side, and then there's the truth. So I like to look at all three sides. My mom has always told me, always very much strongly put me in every education book and every museum that she can so I can learn about my history. And you know that the silver spoon is not fed to us, but what we do with that. I do understand both sides why there is that stereotype is because some people like to feed into that stereotype of, well, this is how they acted, so I need to act that way to be quote unquote black. But I feel like you can better yourself. You don't have to go into that stereotype. I mean, it's sad, but there's a reason why a stereotype is a stereotype. It was somehow found true, and to keep feeding into that will only affect everybody else who's around you who doesn't act that way. I've had many instances where I've been walking to a store, I've seen people steal, and because I'm the same color, they check me. But I'm like, I don't even walk in with them. But it's just one of those things that I always like to put myself, and I'm like, you do not have to continue to feed into this negativity. You can put yourself above this and rise above it.
Yeah, and I think the injustice comes from, though, that it's not always black people who commit crimes. And when white people or other people commit crimes, they're not automatically stereotyped as people who commit crimes. Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like that's like where I'm annoyed, like how you said, because you can do the same exact thing as the white person standing next to you, and you will still always be black. And even if you did the exact same thing as them, you're still going to be black, just doing the same thing. Okay, this hand back in. What's your name?
I'm Kamari.
Kamari. Okay, Kamari.
So I have a story kind of like this. A few years ago, I went on a group date. All of my friends were white. We're all members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Predominantly white church. We're all pretty good kids. And we were all hanging out at the mall. There were 6 of us, and they were kind of just screwing around and being obnoxious and loud and stuff. And I had walked off away from them because I was like, I can't get in trouble. This is my mall. No one else was from here. And I joined back, and the cop walked over and looked directly at me and pretended like I was the problematic child, being the obnoxiously loud one, and told us, while looking directly at me, that if you guys do not leave now, we'll arrest all of you. Just because we were all, they more than me, were being really obnoxiously loud, but he was looking directly at me when he said that.
Yeah.
And I was like, we need to leave, guys. Like, this is my mom. They're like, no, we'll be fine. And then he came back again and said, we are either going to kick you guys out for being a group bigger than 5, because apparently that's a rule, which is stupid. But then he was like, if you guys do not leave now, we will arrest all of you. But he kept looking at me as though I was a problematic child, and I was the one that was like, guys, we need to calm down, we need to do something else. But simply because of my race, I was the one that looked to be presented as the problem, when I was the one who was walking away from them because they were causing an issue with me, with the cop.
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, I hear all of the young ladies, and it's beautiful what you're saying, but this is something that you guys are going to have to embrace that's going to happen the rest of your life. We all know that Oprah Winfrey, right? We all know Oprah Winfrey, correct? And so she walks into a store, and we know she has more money than most people, right? She's on the top of the list. And the same exact thing that you're talking about happened to her, right? So this is just something that we have to embrace, that we may have to educate. But however, some people are never going to learn, right? And so we have to just, kind of like the young lady said, embrace who we are and go on and go forward. And just accept that that's how people are going to look at you regardless. Some people, not all people, right? Look at you regardless just because of the color of your skin. And so, not that we have to fall into what they think that we are. Just know yourself and be proud of who you are and continue on. And then hopefully, you'll have that hope, right? That, things will change. But, just know who you are and embrace that and just be prepared that, wherever you go, no matter who you are, you're going to be one.
I was
just gonna say, with her saying that, I was eating, so I was really listening, so I don't know if you touched on this. But have any, like how Star in the book, she overcompensated with acting how like she felt, in that in the end, she was angry and frustrated with herself. Have any of you ever felt like in a situation like, dang, I should have been more, you know, more myself or more black about it. Like, I shouldn't have sugarcoated myself for anybody because they're gonna look at me this way regardless. If I'm educated, got 2, 3, or 4 degrees.
Yeah.
Thoughts?
No.
I just want, because they're younger, so I just wanted to know their opinion, living in a,
My comment kind of piggybacks on that, so while you guys are thinking about that. Okay, the first thing is that someone said that people tell me I'm acting white. Okay, maybe it's just me in the room, but I was like, really, in 2018, we're still saying that? That people act white? I don't get that. I'm like, really? You're in high school now and they say this, they said that? When I was in school, that was like a lifetime ago. And then, well, you know, it wasn't 100 years ago, but it was quite a while ago. And so I'd be interested if this issue of like, describing people based on some basic characteristics, is that like a regular occurrence? Because, you know, listening to R&B music or rap music or using certain slang terms, I hear people do that whether they're white, black, Mexican, or whatever. So I don't understand this acting white, so I'm confused by that. And then the other thing that I was gonna say is I'm kind of picking on 2 young women in the room who belong to me. And I'm saying, when you were in elementary school, you went to elementary school where you were only, there was what, maybe 2 other African American students or students of color in that school. And did you feel like you had to act a certain way to be in that school? Because I don't know, as a parent, I was feeling like you were pretty comfortable and doing well. So I'd be interested in that feedback. And then about the whole white thing, is that like rare for people who are just latecomers and that don't understand that those stereotypes are like outdated? And then reflecting on your own experiences in elementary school.
Yeah.
See, and also with that, it's just not, we're not the only ones being told we act white, because I've gotten that on multiple occasions just because my grandma's better than the stereotypical black person. But then there are white people who listen to R&B and all that stuff, and like her in rap, and they're told you're trying to act black. It goes back and forth depending on what race you are, your interests.
Everybody listens to those music, uses that terminology, does that. It has to do with, you know, what's
It's your
trending.
interest.
Right, it's American. So I guess I'm stunned that I'd be stunned that that's still like a big problem.
I think we had kind of like nodded to each other when Mariah had said it, because Mariah's the one who said that she gets called a black white girl, and then everybody was like, yeah, like that's definitely been something, like, that's been my experience as well. And so, do you guys want to talk about that? And I'll let Kayla answer my mom's question.
Well, in middle school, some girl was like, Journey, you are the nicest black girl I've ever met. Like, you're not ghetto or anything. I was like, thank you. Not really, but yeah, it is sort of messed up how yeah, I just thought how that was messed up, but I was raised to be proper, not act like I'm not supposed to act, and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I had a moment where I have a friend, she's Asian, so I wore my hair like this, you know, typical black girl hairstyle, I guess. And I was sitting there, she said hi to me. I'm being nice to her. And later on, she told me, she was like, Drea, I never knew you was gonna be super nice to me. I thought you was just another ghetto type girl. I thought you was gonna just be rude towards me. And I just looked at her like, oh, okay. And I just nodded my head. I didn't want to react, but I was like, it made me think like, just because of what I look like, that put me in a stereotypical like part of being black or anything. So it didn't upset me. I just wanted to teach her more about black people out there that are super nice and they're not just ghetto because they're black.
I think that's because like people have this thing burned in their brain that this is how black people are supposed to act, this is how white people are supposed to act. It's not the truth, and that's what this society has made up in our head, that that's not actually the truth. People have their own personalities and who they are. It's not based off of their race.
I mean, since when does being grammatically correct qualify you as being white?
Right. Especially with all the dialects in the United States.
I'm
just
putting
it out. One use of colloquialisms does not define me as a human being. I'm just gonna put it right there for you. I'm just saying.
I saw somebody else's hand.
Can I answer your mom's question about the students, like you guys going to school? Because I went to school that was, like me and my brother were like the only African American children. I think it starts at home. Children don't look at different colors of races of people, because me and my mom were in a cell phone store and this little girl that was a different race came up and was playing with us on her parents' cell phone, and her parents didn't mind. So I truly believe like some of it starts at home. You teaching your child the different races, because when I grew up, I played with my neighbors that were a different race than me. So I really felt like in school, we were all the same. I never looked at the color of their skin and the color of my skin. But as I grew older and started developing more things, you do notice because of society and the way they put things. But as a kid, I don't think our parents never taught us, like, you don't talk to white people, you don't talk to black people. Everybody was the same, everybody's equal, and that's what I still go by to this day.
Yeah. Thank you. And then behind Kayla, there was a hand. I don't know.
Too much to say. I could take over. I'm sorry. I'm like sitting back here trying to hold it in. Well, while she's trying to get her thoughts together, that's my sister-in-law. So as I was hearing my daughter Journey talk about the way she was raised, I was raised in Oklahoma in a rural town that was predominantly white. So when she says she was raised to be proper, I didn't really realize that we were doing that, I guess. And for me, I think that being raised in a rural town in Oklahoma and then going to an HBCU in Oklahoma, those are two different worlds. And we talk about people saying acting white in both races. Like, I never heard that from my white friends that I was acting white. I didn't hear that until I went to Langston University, which is an HBCU. And so when my girls started coming home talking about their either white friends or black friends saying, mostly black friends saying, you know, you're a black white girl, and I'm like, what does that mean? You know? And obviously I've already been through that. I've already been told that myself. And I've always kind of tried to teach them that, you know, we have our personal self and we have our, for me, my professional self. So in the middle, that's who, you know, I feel like both are who we are, you know. Yeah. There's a time and a place for everything is how I was raised. And so that's how I raise my children as well. So I thought it was just interesting how we hear that a lot still. What Teresa was saying is that you're the blackest white girl I've ever met. My daughter, Legend, she has dealt with that probably more. I don't know.
The most, like
yeah,
the most. Family.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
So she sometimes becomes very angry and says rude comments like, is it because I know how to, right, is it because I know how to speak proper English?
Is it because I know who my dad is? Like, I mean, it's just crazy comments that she has to sometimes pull out just because she's upset that people continue to look at her that way.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
Okay, quickly, sorry. Because I grew up at Pleasant Valley, no hate to the school district at all. Great education, love the district. But, you know, when growing up, like many of you said, when you're younger, you're like, I don't see anything different, and I didn't. And it's really junior high that is kind of speaking to me, because that's when, you know, you're going through the hormones and you still have to start liking a guy. And I'm looking around, and I'm not seeing any guy that looks like me, so I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm gonna start liking other races. That's fine. I mean, my parents didn't grow me like, oh, you have to date one race. They said you love who you love. If they treat you right, I'm gonna like them too. So I was like, all right. But I noticed that no guys would ever pay attention to me. And at first I thought maybe it was because I was a little chunky. So I was like, maybe I need to lose some weight, you know? But then after I lost the weight, I'm like, wait a minute, it's not because I'm chunky. And so I was like, maybe I need to straighten my hair. Straighten my hair, got a few more looks, but still nothing. And so I realized I was converting myself more into the woman I saw, instead of, you know, my grandparents or my mom. I was changing my image to try to fit in. And then the more I changed my image, the more I would change my personality. And then that's when I realized that's why I'm getting your acting like. And for me, it wasn't as much of an insult, it was actual fact. I was trying to change myself so I could be noticed and liked by my peers. But as I grew older, if you've read any of my articles in the magazine, you've seen my transition. I haven't straightened my hair in years. I love my curly hair, and
It looks great, but
it had in a pineapple, and then I tore it out, and I was like, I gotta go. But
As you bring some magazines in case somebody would like to read more.
on the cover of the fall edition.
A beautiful cover, by the way.
But the more, you know, as of now, I still go there, and I do admit, don't tell my mom, I am, you know, dating a white guy. And so the more I am talking to him, the more I'm talking to him, the more I get to educate him on, you know, things. Like today he commented on my shirt, and he's like, I didn't know that was a true saying. I always said black girl magic, and he thought I was joking. And he's like, no, this is a true saying, isn't it? And I'm like, yes. And the more I get to educate him, the more proud I am to be black, and the more proud I am to represent my Mexican side. But at the same time, I am proud to say, you know, my friends are white too. It's not a problem for me when people say it anymore, because I'm like, I'm just being me. So no matter what race you think I am trying to perceive, I'm just being me. So.
I think that's a really good transition. Now she can get some snacks. I think that's a really good transition into Star and Chris's relationship, because Star actually looks to Chris a lot throughout the book for support, even though he resembles the same type of person who committed a crime towards her friend. And I think that was really brave of her. But do you guys want to talk about Star's relationship with Chris? And she even talks about in the book the relationship between Chris and her family, and how she wasn't looking forward to telling her father about Chris. Not necessarily because, you know, she was dating somebody, but because the person that she was dating was white. And she had said that her brother preferred that she was a nun, so he preferred that, you know, she didn't date anybody. But her mom was okay with it as long as, like Mariah was saying, as long as they treat you right. But she had some really strong feelings about how she thought her dad was going to react. Do you guys have any reactions to kind of like that dynamic?
I'll say I don't know if it's gonna happen, but maybe a similar experience, because I don't see like Mariah said, that people that look like me or anything who are well kept together or anything. I usually find it outside my race mostly, but I feel like I'll have more of experience like with her dad and trying to tell my dad that I want to date outside my race because he's a black man and stuff. But the reaction, I think it's a good that she found somebody who is very supportive as like her family, and I feel it's more like it makes her into a better person that she tells him what happened and stuff. It kind of gave her like a feeling of like trust in him, and gave like more of an open relationship between them two.
About what she said, I think it's cool how Star found someone that she feels comfortable with and not just has to code switch every time she's with her family or with her friends. And I think it's different for me because my dad was like, you don't, whoever you date or marry, like love is love, and if they treat you right, then that's the person for you. And so I kind of I feel like that's a different part of Star that I'm like different from, because she's worried about her dad being worried about like her white boyfriend, but I feel like that's different for me. But so yeah.
Cool. Kayla?
I thought it was interesting that when he first found out, he was like, oh, you're dating a white boy. But then at the end, he explained to her, daughters date their role models of who their father was. And I thought it was interesting that he finally let down that wall and was like, it's not about him being black or white or purple, it's that you couldn't find somebody that looked like me because essentially I wasn't there.
Yeah.
So he thought he had played a role in it, thus making it like a negative thing.
Right.
That's my friend.
Connect the dots.
Do you think as you're growing up that you believed, like started to fall into believing the stereotypes that are held against us?
Wait, can you say it a little louder?
As you were growing up, like through junior high, high school, do you believe that you began to fall into believing the stereotypes that are held against people of color?
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of people keep going back and forth with the behaviors and the stereotype, with the race and the behaviors of students. Like me and my daughter, my name's Torisha, I'm Maria's mom, and she gets her nails done, so we go get her nails done. And we experienced a little racism by them expecting us, because I guess they think we're sisters, you know, because we're about the same height and that, so they think that we're just some young girls coming in there. And they don't want to help us, or if they do help us, they kind of discriminate if they were being ghetto. And so Jeray made a comment about being ghetto and black, and I'm like, I don't understand how it goes together. If you're ghetto, that's an action, that's a behavior. You know, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're black if you're being ghetto. So everybody's throwing out these behaviors and these actions, and then it has to be black. If you're proper, you're educated, then you're acting white. Whoever said that white meant education, because white people are also educated, you know. So I'm always just, you know, telling Jeray that and trying to raise her to just know that just be who you are, love yourself first. Because if you don't love yourself, nobody is, no matter what color you are. And it matters, and unfortunately it really does. So at the beginning of the day, you gotta come out, look your best, and give it your best shot. But when your color is a little brown, it does make it a little bit harder. But all you gotta do is just love yourself, keep smiling, keep going, you know? So if you wanna fall into that, you know, then that's what will happen. But at the end of the day, you gotta always remember that you keep your head on and you believe that you are who you are no matter what.
Yeah.
They're gonna discriminate against you no matter what. Like my mom said, they prosecuted you, so this is what happened.
Teresa.
Yes, I was going to say that we're winding down in terms of time, in terms of, you know, if there's any final comments, but also that we've got some movie passes to give away. I know that there were some online winners. And then we're gonna draw for 2 people to get movie passes that are here, and we have some other passes. But I want to give you, anybody in the room or the panel, a chance to have any final comments.
I would like to answer your question. This recently just happened. I've never like worn a weave or anything, and I went to my friend and I was like, I want to get box braids. And I was asking a group of my friends, there was all races in there. It wasn't just one or the other. And one of the girls was like, well, you don't want to perceive by that group. And I'm saying that group because I'm not listing names. There's a certain group in my grade that wear box braids. They're loud, they skip class, they're always starting fights, and they wear them all the time. And as for me, it was automatically assumed that now if I wear them, I'm perceived with them. And it's kind of that, so that stereotype of just me wanting to wear just a hairstyle so my hair can get a break, that I'm automatically assumed that I'm ghetto because of the hair that I am rocking, or because sometimes I like to not use the most proper English and want to use some slang. But you do feed into that stereotype. We're not born racist, but we're raised racist. And even Black people, we have a racist mindset. So it's one of those things that you think that you have to be that, but I don't know. I hope I answered some of your question.
Real quick, if you don't mind. So you should get your box braid, right? You show them that you do not belong with that group that they perceive in some one way, right? So don't, once again, as we all have said out here, don't let people put you in a box or let you be perceived as a type, right? You know who you are, you said that, right?
Yes.
So you do you.
It's a strong one.
Yeah.
That's a strong one.
Set the record straight, man.
Don't try to simulate. You said that, right? Be who you are. That's right.
Don't
Shave that part of the head. Shave that part
And hair doesn't define us, right?
It sure does.
I also wanted to add, about start dating a white boy. When kids are younger, they don't see color. But I feel like there is a certain spot where he's Black and I'm Black, so you have to date. That's what me and my sister saw a lot in our elementary school. So once we got to middle school, we were like, you can date anyone you want. I dated a mixed person. Didn't work out, but
Did you all like that? Making sure mama knows.
How old is she? Yeah. But you have to be open to I have to be a little bit more open to find that special someone. My best friend is actually dating a Black boy. She's here today. But yeah, it's 2018. We need to stop seeing color and everything. But yeah, I think love is love at the end of the day, and that's what we need to see in society now.
And as a father raising 2 strong Black women, I just want somebody that's going to love my daughters. And if they don't love my daughters, that's when it's a problem.
Okay.
I don't care white, Black, whatever, but you better love my daughters.
That's my dad.
Yeah, that's
And I've never discussed race with them.
That's
Have
true.
I? I've never, but if who they love is who I love, if they take care of them. That's
what my dad told me actually.
You talking about box braids, they outside the race, you stronger than you know.
Right.
Yeah, you're strong, you gotta be ready for all everything when you date outside the race.
I totally agree with Journey because we recently moved into our new place, and Layla made friends with our neighbor, and it was kind of difficult because she was asking all these kind of questions like, why is your skin dark? And it seems like you spray painted your skin, or the bottom of your foot and your hand is a different color than your skin, and we not the same color. And she was asking all these questions, and it was kind of difficult to explain it to her, but not expose her to it because I'm not her parent. Like I want her parents to be able to express those, tell her those things. Like it's not my job, and it was kind of difficult to be just stay in my place, but also kind of help her at the same time. Like you can't just leave the kid hanging.
Yeah, and it, yeah, in addition to that, I have mostly white friends, and they always ask me like, so how does your hair work? Like, how does it get braided? I'm like, well, you do this, and it's a little complicated. They're like, how long does it take? I'm like, well, for me, I don't like sitting still, so it probably takes like 2 days or so. But other people like to sit still, and it takes a day. Like, they like to know like more about my cultural background and stuff. So I tell them, and I think that's really sweet and interesting.
Yeah, I don't find offense when people ask me because I love to educate them.
Yeah,
You want to know? I will. Here's a book. You got some time because I will tell you. I love to educate.
I want to make sure that before everybody takes off, that we said thank you to the public library and Amber Carlson.
Hey, Amber.
LoveGirls magazine here to use their voice. I want to thank you guys for listening to them and supporting them and expressing their thoughts and what they have to say. And I think you guys did a great job.
Okay. I know that we didn't get to everybody's closing remarks, so if you have like one sentence that sums up how you feel about the book, go for it.
All I can say is after I read this book, I bought the book, so don't worry, I'm not stealing it from nobody. But after I read this book, the first thing I said to my boyfriend is like, you need to read this to understand me.
Good. Thank you.
Go ahead, girl.
They all know that.
Well, I think this book has opened up my eyes to like more stuff that is reality in society, and I think that more people do need to read this book to understand sort of a different sort of point of view than what society puts in our heads, and I think that this is an interesting book to read to actually do that.
Well, I learned from history, Black people, and I like the book because it shows more to Black history. It shows people more how we deal with police officers by day, because more people want to know if they just think we're messing around or anything. Oh, we're just being ghetto, it's okay, so they deserve it, blah, blah, blah. But this gives another perspective on how a Black person who is not ghetto, who lives in the ghetto, but is not ghetto and is trying to fight for justice. And it shows that there is people out there who want justice for people, and they don't have to be ghetto or they don't have to be white to get that justice for people.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
I don't have a closing remark.
Huh? That was my closing remark. Thank you. We have movie passes. Are they just gift cards, or nobody knows? Or I think
they're $10 gift cards
to go see the movie, which comes out next week. So we had 2 online winners, but they have to be here to win. So if they're not here, then sorry. Caitlin Turner. Kathleen. Okay, girl.
You guys did an excellent job.
Oh, thank you. And then we have Ashley Moeller. Okay. And then I think, Mom, can you get the thing in the back?